Get your life together. Wake up. You're becoming a joke to everyone. That's what my brother said to me at his own promotion party, right after I told him I was starting a small business. I wasn't surprised. I grew up hearing things like that. In our family, he was always the golden standard, and I was the one who could do better. And if you've ever been compared to a sibling, a relative, or someone you never asked to be measured against, then this story is for you. For every child who's ever heard, "Why can't you be more like your brother or sister?" For anyone who's ever felt smaller every time they were stacked up against someone else. If you've been there, stick around and listen, because I think you might just see a part of yourself in this story. Hi, I'm Noah. I'm 35, the founder and CEO of Lumalogic. This tech company builds a user behavior analytics platform currently being implemented in education and finance systems across more than 10 states. I live with my wife and our 2 daughters in a modest home in the northern suburbs of Chicago. It's not a big house, but it's warm enough that every evening when I walk through the door, I feel like I don't have anything left to prove to anyone. I'm not the kind of person who enjoys being in the spotlight. I've never had much interest in getting on a stage to tell my startup story. From day one, I chose to stay behind the scenes, quietly running things, steering clear of the flashy meetings and photo op events that most people think are essential for a founder. And maybe it's that silence that's made me, in my family's eyes, the younger brother who never tries hard enough. The dreamer, the unclear one, the guy with no real future. I was born and raised in a well-off family. My parents, and even my grandparents, weren't the kind to blatantly favor one child over another. They didn't obviously take sides, and they never shut anyone out of the conversation. But they had a habit that I think was so deeply ingrained it became second nature. They loved to compare. Not in a mean-spirited or humiliating way. It was the kind of comparison that came wrapped in a soft tone, speaking with what felt like sincerity. As if they were gently advising, as if they were teaching. They'd take one child as the standard, then use that image to motivate the other. And the reason was always the same: we just want what's best for you. But what they didn't see was that, over the years, those comparisons didn't push me to try harder. They just made me slowly lose any sense of who I was, outside the shadow of Grayson, my older brother. Grayson is 2 years older than me. From a very young age, he was always the role model in our family's eyes. Calm, smart, well-mannered, dependable, never let anyone down. And most of all, he was the example my parents brought up every time they wanted me to try a little harder. My dad had a habit of comparing us. One he probably didn't even realize he had. Every time Grayson achieved something, Dad would look at me and say, not harshly, but in a tone that built a quiet wall between us, "How can 2 kids from the same family be so different?" My mom was gentler, but her words always carried a clear message. If your brother can do it, then you can too, right? I don't remember the very first time I was compared to him. Maybe it was a parent-teacher conference in elementary school. Perhaps it was the day we played sports together and he won. But I do remember how it felt, like I was never seen as my person. Everything I did, whether it was good or not, was always weighed against a measuring stick named Grayson. Even when I did something that made my parents proud, the reaction was often, "Good, but still not quite like your brother." I remember one time I topped my class in school. My dad nodded, then asked, "Was the test hard? Because your brother got a perfect score too back then, and he didn't even need a study group." It's not that they meant to hurt me. I genuinely believe that, in their minds, bringing up Grayson was just a way to give me something to aim for. But what they didn't realize was that the older I got, the less it felt like I was striving to be a better version of myself, and more like I was trying not to be seen as the lesser one. I used to think that once we were both adults, with our own families and our kids to raise, my parents would finally stop comparing us. But I was wrong. Even after I got married, had children, and built a stable life, I still heard things at family gatherings like, "Your brother's kids are so well behaved," or, "Why don't you try doing it the way your brother does?" And every time, I'd smile, nod, and quietly accept their advice. A routine I'd fallen into since the day I entered the working world. I remember back in college, those comparisons still stung. Sometimes I pushed back. Other times I just kept quiet and swallowed it down. But after I graduated, when I started carving out my path, I realized I couldn't live my life to prove something to anyone. Not even to my parents. That's when I stopped trying to become some alternate version of my brother. I stopped chasing the goal of being recognized. Instead, I focused on building what I believed in. I chose to move slowly but steadily. I chose to work quietly without needing praise, without requiring a trophy wall to show it off. and I made it beyond anything they ever expected. I still believe my parents meant well with their comparisons. But what they never realized was that, over time, their words didn't just weigh on me. They hurt Grayson, too. He began to carry himself with arrogance. He got so used to being praised, to being held up as an example, that he stopped listening to anyone. He started looking down on people who didn't follow the same path he did. And I could see it clearly in the way he spoke, in the way he looked at people, including me. While he kept basking in his success, he had no idea I'd already gone further than he had. And he definitely didn't see it coming, that moment just 3 years ago when he realized what I'd built. And it shook him. I still remember that night vividly. A weekend evening 3 years ago at Grayson's promotion party. He had just been named director of strategy at a major firm, and as usual, a big celebration was held at his house. He invited the whole extended family, our parents, relatives, and, of course, my wife and me. We arrived around 6 in the evening, me, my wife Natalie, and our 2 daughters. Anna was 5 at the time, and Zoe had just turned 3. Even though I'd always been the one compared to Grayson, the one seen as the lesser opposite, I never once skipped a family gathering. To me, those comparisons never crossed the line. They weren't insults. They weren't attacks. When we stepped into the backyard, where the party was already in full swing, a few cousins greeted us warmly. Natalie, always graceful, took the girls around to say hello to the older relatives. I walked alongside them, nodding, smiling, the same as I always had. As soon as my parents saw us, they came right over, arms outstretched, to hug the girls. Their eyes lit up like the girls were the only bright spot they'd been waiting for all day. But then, as if on cue, my mom repeated it. "You should really learn from your brother." I chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because I was just so used to it by now. I didn't respond. I just gave a slight nod and let the comment pass, like I always did. The party went on. People had settled into little groups, conversations flowing from table to table. I was pouring a drink for Anna when someone at the following table asked, "So Noah, how's work going these days?" I looked up and answered casually, "It's going well. I'm actually planning to start my own company. Thought I'd give entrepreneurship a shot." Before I could say another word, Grayson cut in. He didn't ask what I was working on. He didn't care about the idea. I didn't bother to ask what I'd prepared or how serious I was. In front of everyone, he dropped 2 quick, clean lines without hesitation. "Get your life together. Wake up. You're becoming a joke to everyone." The conversation around the table stalled. Just for a moment. No one said a word. No one laughed. Under the table, Natalie gently reached for my hand. I just stared down at my glass, then leaned in and kept cutting up fruit for Anna. I didn't react that night. Not because I was weak. Not because I agreed with him. But because I knew, sooner or later, he'd have to face my silence. And when that time came, it wouldn't be me. It'd be him who would have to rethink everything. I've always wanted to live a quiet, low-key life. Not because I lacked confidence, but because I never felt the need to be seen in order to feel seen. But some moments are unavoidable. And sometimes, those moments pull you out from the shadows you once chose to stand in. The 10th anniversary of Lumalogic was one of those moments. It was a significant milestone, one that Michael, my best friend from college and co-founder, and I had been working toward for a long time. And from that event forward, I was no longer the invisible figure behind the curtain. The name Noah started showing up on social media, in write-ups, in tech publications, places I never imagined I'd be mentioned. But more important than all of that was the fact that, for the first time, Grayson found out that all these years, he had been working for me. The gala took place exactly 1 month after Grayson's promotion party. That evening, Natalie and I dropped the girls off at their grandparents'. The event allowed employees to bring their families as a gesture of appreciation from the leadership team, and I had a strong feeling I'd run into my own family there. And just as I expected, right as we stepped into the grand ballroom, I spotted Grayson walking in with our parents. He froze the moment he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he asked, almost instinctively. I had already played out a few scenarios in my head, so it didn't take long to answer. I looked him in the eye and said, "The company invited me. They wanted me to attend and learn more." He nodded, didn't ask anything further. He just gave his usual line, "That's good. You need to keep pushing yourself." Then they moved on to find their seats. 30 minutes later, the event officially kicked off. Natalie and I had just gotten settled at our table when a server brought over dessert. I was cutting a piece of cake for her when the lights dimmed, and the MC took the stage. Her voice rang out clearly over the mic. On behalf of the organizing team, I'd like to inform you that Mr. Michael Warren, co-founder of Lumalogic, will be joining us a bit later due to an urgent matter. And to begin the evening on time, we are honored to invite Mr. Noah Green, co-founder and executive strategic advisor, to the stage to deliver the opening remarks. I froze, knife still in hand. One thought looped in my head. Why me? Since day one of building this company, I'd deliberately stayed in the background. Internally, I was listed as executive strategic advisor, a title vague enough that no one asked questions, quiet enough that I didn't have to attend a single public-facing meeting. My name showed up on every approval system, but to most employees, only Michael was visible. Someone once joked that senior advisor must just exist on paper, and I never felt the need to correct them. I had never shown up at company events, never given a speech, and never sent a single company-wide email under my name. Those few seconds felt like they stretched forever, and it wasn't until the MC repeated my name that Natalie leaned in, touched my sleeve, and whispered gently, "They're calling you." Right after that, I stood up, straightened my suit jacket, and walked up to the stage, under a roomful of stunned eyes. As I reached the podium, I glanced toward the wings. Michael was standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes slightly squinted like he was watching the room's reaction unfold. When our eyes met, he gave a slight nod and raised a thumb. No words, just a quiet signal. And in that moment I knew this was his doing. It is a small trap, but without malice. Michael knew I'd never willingly step into the spotlight, so he'd decided for me. Tonight was mine, and he wanted the room to see me finally. I took a deep breath and picked up the mic. With the calm of someone used to calling shots from behind the curtain, I began the opening speech, like it had always been part of the plan. I talked about the 10-year journey, from 2 old laptops in a college dorm room to a partner network stretching across more than 10 states. I spoke about late-night meetings, near failures right before launch, and the people who stuck with us through the hardest seasons. As I scanned the room, I saw surprise in some faces and smiles on others. A few nodded, like watching the final puzzle piece fall into place. And then my eyes met Grayson's. And in a flash, just a second long but unmistakably authentic, everything inside me went silent. He wasn't frowning. He didn't look angry. He didn't look down. But he couldn't hold the confidence he usually wore like armor. Instead, his eyes dimmed like someone who'd just seen something they never expected. Not the look of someone offended. Not even envy. But something slower. Something more shaken. A quiet disbelief. And a trace of confusion. Like he was rewinding in his mind, trying to remember how many signs he'd missed. How many times he'd seen a project marked, approved by NG and never asked. How many meetings he'd sat through wondering who that advisor was. Then brushing it off because it didn't seem worth his time. And now, the man standing before him, under the lights, was no longer the little brother who got compared, who was once dismissed as a dreamer with no direction. Now, standing before him, he was his superior, the one signing his paycheck. After the speech, I returned to my seat and let the rest of the program carry on. Under the table, Natalie gently took my hand. Her eyes said everything. "I'm proud of you." She didn't need to say it out loud. I nodded, silent. The room buzzed on as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for me, time seemed to slow down. Later that night, as the music swelled during the main performance, my mind drifted back to the day Michael and I started Lumalogic. I thought about our old apartment, the midnight meetings around the kitchen table, the failed demos in front of stone-faced investors, the ignored emails, and those long stretches when neither of us could take a paycheck. I remembered the nights I wanted to quit, but kept typing line after line of code because, deep down, I believed this platform could actually mean something. And as I looked up at the stage, at the massive screen displaying the Lumalogic logo, at the rows of applauding employees and guests, I realized it was all worth it. A journey that began with nothing had become a company valued at nearly $30 million. Not because of luck, but because of every small step, every failed pitch, and every quiet moment I chose to get back up when there was no one left to cheer me on. After the party, we headed home. That night, our 2 little princesses stayed over at their grandmother's, and for the first time in weeks, the house was just me and Natalie. A quiet evening. No toys clattering on the floor. No little voices calling for us from the other room. Just the 2 of us and the soft echo of everything that had happened at the gala. But one thing kept tugging at my mind the whole ride back. I hadn't seen Grayson for the rest of the event. He never came up to the stage. He didn't stay with the crowd. And he wasn't in the group photo at the end. I wasn't sure when he left. Only that when I stepped down from the stage and looked around, the seat beside our parents was still empty. I figured maybe, after learning the truth that the younger brother he once mocked at his promotion party just a month earlier was actually the founder of the company he worked for, maybe it just got under his skin. Maybe it hit his pride. Maybe it rattled his sense of control. Whatever the reason, I believed he'd cool off by the next day. That one night would be enough. But what I didn't expect was that my quiet reveal would shake him more deeply than I ever imagined. The next morning, the doorbell rang, sharp and frantic, right at 7. It wasn't the kind of ring you give a friend. It wasn't polite. It was aggressive, impatient. Something I'd never heard from anyone who'd ever shown up at our front door that early. I opened the door, and there he was, Grayson. He stood there, reeking of alcohol. His dress shirt was wrinkled and untucked, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept a second all night. He didn't look like a man who had just come from a prestigious gala. He looked like a man who had spent the night wrestling with something too heavy for his pride to swallow. Before I could say a word, he growled through clenched teeth, "You're a piece of shit. You did that on purpose. To humiliate me in front of Mom, Dad, everyone." His voice cracked with anger, loud, wild, unfiltered. The following few words weren't even sentences anymore. Yelling, accusations, blame thrown in every direction. I tried to speak. I tried to explain. I told him I never planned any of it. That I didn't know the MC would call my name. That I never meant to expose him. Never set him up to be embarrassed. But nothing got through. Grayson wasn't listening. He was unraveling. Years of pressure, pride, and buried insecurity finally boiling over. He lunged forward, not to hit me, but to unleash everything he'd held back for far too long. Natalie jumped in between us, terrified. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking. And within minutes, there was a knock at the door. The police. And I knew then this had gone way too far. At 5 in the afternoon, the police called me back. The officer said Grayson had sobered up and calmed down. I hung up the phone, grabbed my coat, and drove to the station without overthinking. Not because I'd forgotten what happened that morning, but because I knew, if there was ever a time to forgive, maybe this was it. The bail process didn't take long. When I walked in, Grayson was sitting on a bench in the hallway, head down, hands clasped together. He still smelled of alcohol, and his eyes were dull from lack of sleep. But the anger was gone. What remained was something quiet and heavy, like he'd spent the whole day trying to peel off a shell he hadn't even realized he'd been wearing for years. On the drive back, he didn't say a word. We just sat there in silence. The only sounds were the ticking turn signal and the soft hum of the AC. It wasn't until we turned onto the road near home that he finally spoke, his voice low and tired. "I'm sorry." It was a short sentence, but it carried weight. And it was enough for me to understand the rest of it. We needed to talk about that somewhere quieter. Somewhere without honking horns, without kids running through the house, without memories tangled in guilt and pride. We didn't go home right away. I turned into a small coffee shop on the north corner, the one where we used to grab breakfast back in college. Not for nostalgia, but because it was quiet enough, far enough, for the two of us to face each other honestly. 30 minutes after we sat down, he was still silent, just staring at the cup of coffee in front of him. Then, finally, he looked up, his voice low and slow. "Starting tomorrow, I'm quitting the company." I froze. I asked him why. He looked straight at me, no hesitation in his eyes. "I've been fooling myself about how capable I really am. I kept thinking I had earned everything. I was talented because I deserved it. Not realizing the one backing me up this whole time were you." At that moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man sitting across from me, the same man who once arrogantly told me, "You're never gonna make it if you keep doing things your way," was now looking at me with an expression of recognition, not bitterness, just honesty. I placed my hand on the table and gently shook my head. "You're wrong. I never backed you up." Then I told him everything. 2 years ago, when his resume landed at Lumalogic, I found out through Michael. Michael asked me what I thought, and all I said was, "Follow the usual hiring process. Don't say anything to him." And he passed that highly competitive interview process on his merit. There were times I didn't like how he treated me, but I always had to admit one thing. He was damn good at what he did. The director of strategy position he earned after 2 years. There was never any hand-pulling from me. I never vouched for him, never pushed him up the ladder. He earned it all himself. And as the founder of that company, I'd never felt more proud of any employee than I did of my brother. As for me, I was just a little luckier. That's all. Right after I finished speaking, Grayson went quiet. He didn't argue and didn't agree either. His eyes still held that look of confusion, like someone who'd just been pulled out of a long dream but hadn't quite figured out what was real and what was only imagined. I sat there for a few more seconds, watching him, then said gently, "All right, if you're still doubting your abilities, then this time, I'll let you prove it." Grayson looked up. I continued, slowly, clearly, as if the decision had already been made long before. The upcoming project, the one to upgrade the user data analytics system for the Westside education chain. You'll be the lead. I won't be involved at any stage. Tomorrow morning, all the project files will be sent to your company email. From that point on, I stay out of it. He didn't respond right away, but in his eyes, maybe for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimpse of the older brother I used to know. Someone with presence, with purpose, and with pressure, but the kind of pressure you step into willingly, not something you try to escape from. And I understood. This wasn't a gift. It was a chance for him to stand on his own 2 feet. This time for real. Ever since the 10th anniversary gala for Lumologic, something began to shift in how my parents, and even the rest of the family, treated me. It wasn't anything dramatic or over the top, just subtle changes that you'd only notice if you were paying attention. The way they said my name, the look in their eyes, and most of all, how they no longer talked about me in that tone that always implied, "You're still not quite where your brother is." That shift became most apparent during my mom's birthday party 2 months after the gala. As usual, the whole extended family showed up. We got there a bit earlier than the official start time, like we always did. Everything felt familiar, from the long table by the window to the exact cake she always ordered from her favorite bakery. But there was one thing that felt different. The person being compared had changed. And the strange part was, I didn't feel any joy from that. Midway through the party, while everyone was chatting and laughing, Uncle Matthew, one of our cousins from my dad's side, suddenly said, "Grayson's really talented, and yet he's just working under Noah? I've got to say, I really admire you, Noah." Before the silence could settle, my mom chimed in right away. "That's right, Noah is our pride now. Grayson still has a lot to learn." I glanced across the table. Grayson was smiling, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something between discomfort and quiet shame, that he was trying to hide behind a polite nod. And right then, I knew what I had to do. I stood up, not loud, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Uncle Matthew, there's something I need to clarify. Grayson, my brother, is incredibly skilled. The director of strategy role he holds now is the result of his ability and relentless effort. I had no hand in that process. If there's any difference between him and me, it's that I got lucky. Lucky enough to start a business at the right time and see it succeed." Then I turned to my mom, my voice a little softer. "Mom, both Grayson and I are your sons. Please stop comparing us. We're 2 different people, each with our strengths and weaknesses." I paused for a moment, looking around the table where the kids sat sprinkled among the adults, their curious eyes watching me. Then I added, this time speaking to everyone, "And please, don't compare me to Grayson or anyone to anyone at gatherings like this, especially not in front of the kids, because to them, their parents are heroes, they're idols. Sometimes, the offhand remarks we make as adults can hurt them more than we realize." The table went quiet. No one said anything for a few seconds. Then my dad's younger brother, Uncle Jordan, finally spoke up, his voice steady and firm. "Noah's right. We've been wrong about this for a long time. And for the first time in many years, I didn't feel like I was stuck in someone else's shadow. I didn't feel like I had anything left to prove. Everything finally was where it belonged." After that speech, the table stayed quiet for a while longer, then slowly warmed back up. 10 minutes later, people were chatting again. Soft laughter floated from a few corners of the room, like everyone silently agreed that what needed to be said had been told and what needed to change was finally in motion. I'd barely made it back to my seat and hadn't even taken a sip of water when Grayson walked over, a beer in hand. He didn't say anything, just gave me a slight nod and motioned for me to follow. We stepped away from the table and out to the back patio, where the soft yellow lights cast a warm glow, and we were far enough from the crowd that no one could overhear. Grayson leaned against the railing, popped the cap off his beer, stared into the distance for a few seconds, then spoke in a low voice. "Thanks for standing up for me in front of everyone. And I'm sorry. For all those years, I never did the same for you." I didn't say anything. Not because I was upset, but because that one sentence carried more weight than any apology or excuse ever could. He took a sip, then turned to me. "You're strong, you know?" I let out a small laugh, but before I could respond, he went on, slowly, like he was peeling off an old, rusted layer of armor. "When they started talking about me like I was the lesser one, I got it. What it must have felt like sitting in that seat for the last 30 years. How damn lonely it is." I looked at him. No arrogance. No I know better tone I'd grown so used to. Just a brother, who finally understood what his younger sibling had quietly carried through an entire childhood. I gave him a light pat on the shoulder. I never needed anyone to stand up for me, but this time, I should stand up for you. Grayson didn't say another word. He just nodded, his second thank you of the night. Quiet but complete. And maybe, for the first time, he and I stood side by side, not to compete, but to understand. After that dinner party, something shifted noticeably in my family. The constant comparisons at every gathering stopped. In their place came words of encouragement. A quiet kind of recognition, subtle but clear enough to feel that everyone was slowly learning to see each other in a new light. Grayson stayed on at Lumalogic, and 6 months later, he completed the project I had handed off to him that night. Not just on time, but beyond expectations. The project brought in a significant revenue boost and opened doors for partnerships with school systems across 3 new states. As the lead on the project, he received a generous bonus. But to me, the real achievement was this. For the first time in years, I saw him honestly believe in his ability. Not because of reputation, and definitely not because of favoritism. It was a win that was entirely, undeniably his. I thought everything would settle down after that. That Grayson would stay with Lumalogic for the long haul, as a colleague, as a brother, as a partner I could trust. But life doesn't always stick to the script we write in our heads. 6 months ago, on a quiet weekend afternoon, he called me out for coffee. Same cafe, same corner seat, the spot where we'd once sat across from each other. After that night, the police brought him in. As soon as the coffee arrived, he got straight to the point. "I'm planning to resign. I'll send in my letter tomorrow. Could you help push it through?" I was caught off guard. A dozen questions rushed through my mind. Was something wrong? Had something happened to make him want to leave? Finally, I just asked him outright, "Why?" He didn't look away. Calm but certain. "I've made up my mind. I want to start something of my own. A new path. Can you help me get started? As an advisor, maybe? Or an investor?" I exhaled slowly. Deep down, I knew that if he left, it would feel like losing my left hand. He had become someone I relied on entirely in the leadership team. But I also understood that he had his road to take, his fire to chase. And I couldn't let my selfishness stand in the way of that. So, in the end, I nodded. "All right, I'll help. Not because he's my brother, but because he's earned that chance. And this time, he's not walking away from anyone's shadow. He's walking towards something of his own making." 2 months later, Grayson's company officially opened its doors. That morning, Natalie, the kids, and I arrived early at the new headquarters. A small but bright office in Midtown. The space was neatly organized, and the sign Orion Insights hung on the front glass. Simple, solid. It wasn't the kind of startup that throws money at appearances, but it felt like a place built to last. Steady enough to begin something real. The guest list was modest. A few old friends, some partners, and the team Grayson had just brought on board. The ceremony started right on time, beginning with a brief introduction before the MC invited Grayson up to speak. He walked out slowly, dressed in a gray suit, hair neatly styled. But I knew, he was still the brother I'd always known, only now with a different view of himself. Grayson took the mic and gave a slight nod to the crowd. He stood there for a moment, then began, his voice calm and measured. "Thank you all for being here today. Honestly, I never thought I'd have a moment like this." He gave a small smile, the kind that comes from someone who's shed old pride and is learning how to face things with honesty. "I thought I was fine. I thought I was good. And I believed there was nothing I needed to change. Until someone came along who didn't say a word. But the way he lived made it impossible for me to keep lying to myself." He paused, scanning the crowd until his eyes found mine. When they did, he gave a slight, deliberate nod. This time, not just a gesture, but a clear, sincere invitation. "Noah, if you don't mind, would you come up here for a moment?" After that, I stood and made my way up. Not because I felt obligated, but because I understood. That thank you wasn't easy for him to say. And if today was the first time he was choosing to speak from the heart, I needed to be there. As I reached him, he raised a hand and gave me a light pat on the shoulder. Nothing showy, just a simple gesture. But it was real. Then he continued, this time not looking at anyone else, just straight ahead. If it weren't for you, I'd still be proud of a version of myself that no longer fits. You didn't lecture me. You didn't blame me. You just lived right. And that alone made me realize I needed to change. He paused again, and for the first time that day, I heard a slight catch in his voice. Then came the most honest words he'd ever spoken. I know, I haven't been a good brother. But if today is a beginning, then I want it to start with a thank you. And I'm sorry. A wave of applause followed his speech. I turned to him and pulled him into a hug. Tight. Real. And in that moment I knew he had truly changed. After the speech, the energy in the room softened briefly, then quickly returned to the light, cheerful atmosphere it had before. A few people came up to shake Grayson's hand. Others turned to offer their congratulations to me. But I knew, for him, the most essential part of that morning wasn't in the well wishes. About 30 minutes later, Natalie, the kids, and I left earlier than planned. Grayson was still busy speaking with partners. We didn't say anything more, just a nod between us as a goodbye. And that was enough. It's been 4 months since my brother started his own company. Things are going steady now, both for him and for me. And today, I'm sharing this story not to boast, not to impress. I'm sharing it because I know out there a lot of people have spent years being compared to someone else. In their family, at work, even in the relationships that matter most. And if you're one of them, I want to say this. Don't waste your life trying to become someone's idea of enough. Don't let a careless comment make you doubt your worth. You don't need to be better. You don't need to win. You need to keep going in your way. And if someone once looked down on you, let time and your actions be the answer. No noise, no proving, just long enough that they can't help but look back. Before I wrap up this story, I want to ask you, the familiar faces who've always been here with me, if you were in my shoes at that exact moment, what would you have done after hearing those hurtful words from your brother? Would you have stood up right then and there and laid it all out in front of everyone? Or would you have walked away in silence? Or would you have chosen what I chose, kept quiet, kept going, and let the results speak for themselves? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, because every choice has its reason, and I believe this story might reflect something from your own life too. And if you found meaning in this story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share it, so that more people can connect with what we're all feeling here together. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the following story. You and your kid are just freeloaders. That's what my younger sister said to me, while she was living in the very house I paid for. And guess what? What did I do? Did I tolerate it? Or did I teach her a lesson? Follow my story and give me your advice. A year ago, I stood in front of my parents' house, where I was born and raised. The sky was gray, mirroring exactly how I felt at that moment. It had been 15 years since I last set foot here, and if it weren't for my mother's urgent phone call, I would never have returned. Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm 34 years old and a creative director at an advertising agency in Seattle. I have a 10-year-old son, Noah. He is my entire world. I remember that fateful Saturday when my mother called, her voice trembling. You need to come home immediately. The family is in serious trouble. But the family she talked about had never truly included me. Because for as long as I could remember, only one person in this family ever mattered. My younger sister, Emily. The memory of the day I walked out of that house is still vivid. I was 19, holding an acceptance letter from UCLA, when my parents called me into the living room and delivered the news that shattered me. We used your entire college fund to invest in Emily. I remember standing there, completely stunned. Invest? I choked out. My mother nodded as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Emily has a gift for the arts. We enrolled her in a prestigious academy. She needs that money to follow her dream. Emily's dream? What about mine? You can take out student loans for college, Hannah. But this opportunity for Emily, it's once in a lifetime. my mother said, trying to make me understand. And so I left home on a sweltering summer night with nothing but an old suitcase, a few sets of clothes, and the little money I had saved from odd jobs in high school. No one saw me off. Not a single word of concern. My parents didn't give me a dime. No financial support, secret check, or hidden savings account to help me start a new life. They left me with the occasional phone calls, just enough to maintain appearances. "Are you doing okay?" my mother asked one Tuesday afternoon, 2 months after I had left. For a moment, I wanted to believe she cared, but as soon as I answered, her tone remained indifferent. "Good. I was checking. Oh, by the way, Emily has been so busy lately. She was just accepted as a student by a renowned professor." I went silent, no words of encouragement. There were no questions about how I managed or whether I had enough to eat. Just Emily, Emily, and more Emily. Every call after that was the same. It's just a formality, so they wouldn't have to feel guilty. Looking back at my college years, I remember how I juggled school and work, constantly moving between classes and shifts. By day, I was a dedicated student. By night, I was a barista at a small coffee shop, sometimes picking up extra hours at a convenience store to afford rent. There were nights when I had to sleep at work because I couldn't afford my room. Days when I survived on expired bread because I had to choose between paying tuition or buying food. I struggled. I broke down. I cried through long, lonely nights. But I never looked back. Every time exhaustion made me want to give up, I remembered my parents' indifferent faces when they told me my dreams didn't matter as much as Emily's. And that became my motivation to keep going. After 4 years of struggling to balance school and work, I graduated with honors and was fortunate to land a stable job at a major advertising firm in Seattle. For the first time, I didn't have to worry about rent. I didn't have to count every penny at the grocery store. I didn't have to take on extra night shifts to survive. I thought my parents would be proud of me, but the truth was, they didn't care about the journey I had been through. They only cared about one thing: I had money now. It started with casual holiday messages. "Are you coming home for Christmas? We're planning a big party. I'm sure you'd love to contribute a little, right? Thanksgiving is coming up. Could you order a fine china set for me? I saw a beautiful one on XYZ's website, just $500. I know your job is going well. Your dad's birthday is coming up. Don't you want to get him a new watch? You know how much he loves Rolex." Every invitation came with a subtle suggestion for an expensive gift. Not a single question about how I was doing. Not a single conversation about my life. Just money. I wasn't surprised, but I declined every request. "I'm busy with work. I won't be able to make it. My schedule is full. Go ahead and order that gift for Dad. Send the bill to Emily. She's always been the most important one anyway." I didn't care what they thought. They abandoned me first. I had no reason to play by their rules. But I am not ungrateful. Though I could never forgive them, I still sent a small amount of money on their birthdays, $2,000. Not because I felt obligated, but simply because I wanted to keep my conscience clear. Birthday money for Dad/Mom. Hope you use it wisely. No warm wishes. No card. It is just a cold, impersonal bank transfer, quick and detached. I didn't expect gratitude. And, of course, they never once said thank you. 2 years after graduating, I got married. He was once my colleague, witty, charming, and seemingly a responsible man. We built a small family together, and then Noah was born. But marriage is never simple. Sleepless nights are soothing a crying baby. Arguments over household responsibilities. The silent moments when there was nothing left to say. I did. But then, one day, I discovered he was cheating. I didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. I packed up his things, left them by the door, and said calmly, "You can leave now or wait until I throw everything out the window." We divorced after 3 years. Still, he remained a responsible father. Every month, he contributed financially to support Noah. And that was all I needed from him. After everything, I became a strong woman. Not because I wanted to, but because life left me no choice. I no longer believed in romantic relationships. No dating, no love, no searching for someone to fill any space in my life. Noah was everything to me. Every morning I took him to school. Every night I read him a bedtime story. We watched movies, cooked together on weekends, or lounged on the sofa, enjoying the peace I had sacrificed so much to earn. After 7 years of hard work, I was promoted to creative director, a prestigious position with a $300,000 annual salary. With that, I bought a high-end apartment in downtown Seattle. Spacious, secure, fully equipped. A place where Noah and I could truly call home. Everything had finally fallen into place. I had a great job, a stable life, and most importantly, I had Noah, the only person in the world I truly cared about. But then, a phone call a year ago changed everything. Come home right away. Your father is in the hospital. Our family is in serious trouble. My mother's voice trembled over the phone, and I heard real fear in her words for the first time in years. I gripped my phone tightly, my mind in turmoil. My first instinct was to ignore it. I was used to only being remembered when they needed something from me. This time was no different. But then, another thought crept in. No matter what, he was still my father. I had spent my entire youth running away from them, trying to forget the pain they had caused me. But what if this was indeed the last time? If I didn't return, would I regret it for the rest of my life? I wasn't going back for them. I was going back for myself because I didn't want to live with the guilt of not doing the right thing. The next afternoon, after a tower drive, I arrived home. My mother had informed me that my father had already been discharged from the hospital. When I pulled up, the door opened and there she stood, her eyes red and swollen. She looked older than I remembered, maybe because of time or the weight of her poor decisions. Inside, my father sat in his usual chair in the living room, his back slightly hunched, his hair now more silver than 15 years ago. I stepped in, Noah following behind me, silently taking everything in. My mother's gaze quickly shifted past me, landing on him. That was when she finally realized his presence. So did my father. They noticed something other than themselves for the first time since I walked through that door. Oh my God! My mother covered her mouth, her voice trembling. My father blinked rapidly as if he couldn't believe what he saw. My son Noah was the grandson they had never cared about, asked about, or even tried to meet. He stood there, his blue eyes mirroring mine, his wavy brown hair slightly tousled, his small hand gripping the hem of my shirt. Noah, right? My mother finally spoke, her voice suddenly softer, almost unfamiliar. Noah nodded politely but cautiously. And then, as if someone had flipped a switch, my parents' demeanor completely changed. The people who had spent years manipulating me for money suddenly transformed into picture-perfect grandparents. You've grown so much. My goodness, he looks so smart. My mother beamed, reaching out as if to touch him. My father nodded approvingly. He looks just like Hannah when she was little but taller. Do you like sports, kiddo? I could teach you golf. I stood there watching their little performance unfold. 30 seconds ago, they didn't care about me. But now, when they saw Noah, they rushed to show affection as if they hadn't spent years pretending I didn't exist. After a few minutes of fawning over Noah, my mother finally invited me to sit. I didn't move. Arms crossed, I asked flatly, can we skip the act and get to the point? She bit her lip, eyes welling up with tears. The house is about to be repossessed by the bank, Hannah. We need help. I wasn't surprised. The moment she had called, I had already guessed the real reason. I waited for what came next. And, of course, the familiar name followed. Emily took out a huge loan to invest in her fashion boutique. But the business failed and she can't pay it back. We mortgaged the house to help her and now the bank is seizing it. I laughed. Emily. Always Emily. She screwed up and my parents rushed to fix it. She got into trouble and they pulled me in to clean up the mess. I turned to my father, who had been silently observing the conversation. And now you want me to pay off her debt? He nodded slowly without an ounce of shame. You have a great job, Hannah. Just help a little so the family doesn't lose the house. I scoffed. Whose family? My parents looked at each other, saying nothing. Because they knew the truth. They had never treated me like family. I wasn't surprised. But one thing was sure, this time I was no longer the weak, helpless girl I had been 15 years ago. I crossed my arms, my voice calm but cold. How much is the debt? My parents hesitated as if they hadn't expected me to ask that. My mother swallowed hard, then spoke carefully. Around $250,000. But if we can pay $150,000 up front, the bank might extend the deadline. I laughed in disbelief. $150,000? Do you seriously think I will pull out that kind of money to save this house? My father sighed. Hannah, $150,000. Isn't that much for you? I clenched my fists, trying to contain my anger. But before I could respond, the door suddenly swung open. Emily walked in. She raised an eyebrow when she saw me, her expression dripping with mockery. Oh, you showed up? Here to play the hero. I exhaled sharply. No. I saw how often they'd willingly sacrifice me for you. Emily scoffed, folding her arms, her voice sharp as a blade. You always love playing the victim, don't you? I stared at her, feeling a slow, burning fury rise inside me. Emily, the spoiled little sister who had never known hardship and always treated everything as if it were owed to her. My parents had stolen my future to give her everything. And now, here she was, without a shred of remorse, without a hint of gratitude. She was waiting for me to sacrifice myself for her again. But this time, I wouldn't. I took a deep breath, looked straight at my parents and Emily, and spoke clearly, emphasizing every word. I need time to think. I'll give you my answer in 3 days. My mother sighed in relief as if she had temporarily lifted a burden off her shoulders. My father nodded, his expression calm, but his eyes betrayed his anticipation. On the other hand, Emily rolled her eyes, crossing her arms with a smirk. Still putting on a show, huh? We all know you'll come back with your wallet wide open. I didn't react. There was no need to. Without another word, I took Noah's hand and left a room filled with expectations and calculations. On the drive back, Noah spoke first, his voice filled with concern. Mom, are you okay? I gave him a reassuring smile, gently squeezing his tiny hand. I'm okay, Noah. It's just, there are some things I need to think through carefully. Noah nodded, not pressing further. But I knew he could feel the tension in me. When I got home, I pulled out my phone and called Daniel, a close friend from college who was now a real estate attorney. As soon as he picked up, I skipped the pleasantries and got straight to the point. Daniel, I need your advice. My parents are about to lose their house, and of course, they expect me to bail them out. Daniel let out a short, amused laugh. His voice was laced with sarcasm. So, after all these years, they suddenly remember you exist? I sighed, exhaustion creeping into my tone. Exactly. And the most ridiculous part is, they act like my help is a given. Daniel was quiet for a few seconds before asking bluntly, Hannah, are you seriously considering helping them? I bit my lip, thinking for a moment before answering honestly. I don't want to help Emily, but I can't completely turn my back on my parents. No matter what, they're still the people who gave me life. Daniel sighed, his voice dropping slightly. I have a suggestion if you want to help them while keeping things fair. I narrowed my eyes, wary. Go on. Daniel spoke slowly and deliberately. You can buy the house outright and put it in your name. Let them live there, but not for free. Set a clear agreement. If they repay the $250,000 in full, the house returns to them. If not, it stays yours. I leaned back in my chair, mulling it over. This solution wouldn't just give my parents a place to stay and force them to take responsibility for their choices. More importantly, it ensured that Emily would never get another chance to drag me down again. Finally, I took a deep breath and said firmly, I like this plan. Do it. Daniel chuckled through the phone. You've always been the rational one, Hannah. All right, I'll handle the paperwork. I hung up and stared out the window. In 3 days, I would return to that house. But this time, things would be on my terms. 3 days later, I returned to my childhood home, this time with Daniel, my attorney. I didn't come empty-handed. I came up with a contract that would bind everything legally. When my parents opened the door, their faces were filled with worry and anticipation. I could tell they had convinced themselves that I would offer a reasonable solution, meaning a large sum of money with no strings attached. They were wrong. Daniel and I stepped inside and took a seat. Wasting no time, I placed the contract on the table and spoke clearly, enunciating every word. I will buy this house and hold legal ownership. You can continue living here, but only as tenants. To regain ownership, you must pay back $250,000 within 5 years. If not, the house remains mine. And Emily, I turned to her, my voice like steel, you will not be entitled to a single cent of that money. Silence. My parents were stunned as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. My mother immediately burst into tears, her voice breaking. Hannah, how could you do this to your parents? My father stayed quiet, likely trying to assess the situation. But Emily? She didn't even try to contain her outrage. Are you insane? She shrieked, eyes blazing with fury. You're seriously making mom and dad pay to live in their own home? What kind of daughter does that? You're ungrateful. I stood up instantly, picking up the contract from the table. All right then. Forget it. My voice was ice cold as I turned toward the door. Panic set in immediately. Wait, Hannah. My father's voice was sharp, urgent. I paused, glancing back at him with a silent challenge in my eyes. My mother wiped her tears and quickly nodded. We accept your terms. I smirked internally. I knew they would. Daniel quickly finalized the paperwork, and 2 weeks later, the house was legally mine. My parents gradually accepted reality. They stopped trying to renegotiate the terms, probably realizing I wouldn't change my mind. But Emily, she refused to accept it. I knew she wouldn't let go quickly, but I hadn't expected her to stoop this low. The war began 2 days later. It was a Sunday. I was at home with Noah when my phone buzzed. Hannah, have you seen Facebook yet? A message from a coworker. Are you okay? Everyone's talking about you. A text from an old friend. I frowned and immediately opened Facebook. The first thing I saw was Emily's latest post, along with an old picture of me and Noah. Emily Thompson. It's heartbreaking to have a sister with no shame. A single mother, abandoned by her husband, now exploiting her parents for profit. She makes much money but still forces our elderly parents to pay rent. Not surprising, really. She's always been a leech. She was selfish even as a child and always jealous of me. And now, she's pressured our parents into signing over the house and kicked me out of the only home I've ever known. I wonder when she'll stop playing the victim, considering she's the worst manipulator. Below the post were hundreds of comments from people who had no idea what happened. What kind of sister does this? Poor Emily. She must be heartbroken. Can't believe someone would treat their parents like that over money. I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of amusement. Emily had made a colossal mistake. She hadn't just spread lies about me. She had dragged my son into this, and that was something I would never forgive. I left my room to find Noah sitting at the dining table, looking uneasy. Mom, my friend just messaged me. They saw Aunt Emily's post. His voice grew quieter with each word. I clenched my fists before sitting across from him, forcing myself to stay calm. Noah, don't worry. I'll take care of this. Noah nodded, but I could see a deep sadness in his eyes. I immediately called Daniel, my attorney. He picked up on the second ring. Hannah, what's going on? I need you to send a legal notice. Immediately. My voice was ice cold. I had no time to waste. Daniel was silent for a second before asking, what did Emily do this time? I clenched my jaw. She defamed me online. But more importantly, she dragged Noah into it. Daniel's tone shifted, turning serious. That's bad. I'll draft a formal demand for her to take down the post immediately along with a legal warning. If she continues spreading lies, she'll face real consequences. Good. I took a deep breath before adding, I want her out of my house in 2 days. Daniel didn't sound surprised. I figured this was only a matter of time. I'll handle the paperwork, but be ready for some major theatrics. I let out a dry laugh. You know me, I've never been afraid of a fight. That afternoon, Daniel and I drove back to my parents' house. The sun was still up, but inside me, the air felt like the calm before a storm. Daniel kept his eyes on the road the entire ride, but occasionally glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Are you sure you want to handle this in person? He asked. I want to look her in the eye when I throw her out of my house, I replied coldly. Daniel nodded. Then be ready. She won't leave quietly. I smirked, my gaze locked on the road ahead. I'm counting on it. At 4 p.m., I arrived at the house. I stepped out of the car, Daniel beside me, holding a stack of legal documents. The door opened. My parents stood there, tense. Emily lounged on the sofa, legs crossed, phone in hand, acting as if nothing important was happening. Daniel cleared his throat and got straight to the point. Emily Thompson, I am Hannah's legal representative. Under the terms of property ownership, you no longer have the right to reside here. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises, or we will proceed with legal eviction. Emily raised an eyebrow, set her phone down, and let out a dry laugh. Oh, you're serious? She scoffed, arms crossed. I took a step forward, my gaze sharp. Do I look like I'm joking? Emily locked eyes with me, then spat out. You think you're so powerful? You and your little bastard are just leeches. A pathetic woman, abandoned by her husband, pretending to be strong but still just a miserable failure. Smack. Without hesitation, I slapped her across the face. The sound of my palm meeting her cheek echoed through the room. Emily's eyes widened in shock as she clutched her face, unable to believe what had happened. She had never seen me do that before. The room fell into suffocating silence. My parents didn't say a word. They just stood there as if they knew Emily had crossed the line but didn't dare to intervene. I stepped closer, my voice so cold that even I was surprised. You can insult me all you want, Emily, but if you ever drag my son into this again, I promise, it won't just be a slap. Emily clenched her fists, jaw tightening in rage. You'll regret this, she growled, eyes burning with hatred. I laughed low, humorless. No, Emily. For the first time in my life, I regret nothing. Daniel stepped forward, placing a document in front of her. Sign this to acknowledge that you've received your eviction notice. Otherwise, expect a court summons next week. Emily turned to our parents, desperation in her eyes. Mom, Dad, you can't let her do this to me. My parents lowered their heads, silent. Emily looked around, realizing that, for the first time, no one was on her side. With no other choice, she snatched the pen and signed it with such force that it nearly tore the paper. Then she threw the pen onto the table, grabbed her suitcase, and stormed toward the door. Just before leaving, she turned back, her eyes full of fury. You'll pay for this. I shrugged, meeting her glare without fear. Try me. And with that, the door slammed shut behind her. This time, Emily was gone. A year has passed since Emily left my life, and things have been so much better. My parents still live in the house I bought back for $250,000. I didn't leave them homeless or charge them rent, but there were limits. Once a month, I take Noah to visit them. I want my son to maintain a relationship with his grandparents, even if my bond with them will never be the same. I still send them $2,000 monthly to help cover bills and living expenses. Not because I deeply affectionate them, but because they gave me life and I don't want to live with regrets later. And Emily? After leaving my house, she was forced to rent a small apartment. No more safety net or privileges. I heard she's now working as a sales clerk at a convenience store. It's not a bad job, but it's certainly not the life Emily once thought she was destined for. Sometimes my parents bring her up, sighing in regret. Hannah, Emily is still young. She just made some mistakes. My mother said once while I was visiting with Noah. I set my tea down, looked her straight in the eyes, and said coldly, if you mention Emily in front of me again, you can leave this house. Silence. They knew I wasn't joking. They had already lost too many privileges when I took control of my life. And they understood one thing clearly. If they wanted any support from me, Emily was no longer a topic of discussion. Was I too cruel? I don't know. To some, I should be more forgiving. I should welcome Emily back and be more open-hearted toward my family. But to me, family isn't guaranteed by blood. It's built on respect and genuine love. My parents chose Emily over me, time and time again. And now I choose Noah. I choose myself. What about you? Did I do the right thing by keeping my distance from my parents and cutting Emily off completely? Or should I have given them another chance? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future content. Thank you for watching. And always remember, sometimes walking away from a toxic family is the best way to love yourself. If one day your cousin slapped your 16-year-old daughter right in front of you, what would you do? I was in that exact situation. Even worse, my mom and dad defended him. Why did he act that way? And how did I stand up for my daughter? Stay with me, I will tell you the story of what happened. Hello everyone. My name is Damien, and I'm 45 years old. I work as a sales director for an insurance company in Chicago. This job doesn't make me rich but provides a stable life for me and my family. My wife, Olivia, is an accountant at a used car dealership near our home. She's an incredible woman who can balance her career and care for her family. We've been married for 20 years, and I still feel lucky to have her by my side daily. We live in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Chicago with our beautiful 19-year-old daughter. Her name is Sophia, and she means the world to both Olivia and me. Over the past 20 years, we've shared many happy and unforgettable memories. Sophia has always been a bright, kind, and well-behaved kid. She's done well in school and has never given us any reason to worry about her studies. What's special about Sophia is her deep love for music, especially for Taylor Swift. Her bedroom is covered in posters of her idol, and every time a new song drops, she's the first to listen and share it with us. I remember those nights when the whole family would sit in the living room and Sophia would sing her favorite songs for us. Her clear, sweet voice always filled our home with warmth. Looking at our lives now, most people would probably think our families are peaceful and happy. But they don't know that this peace came at a cost. We had to cut ties with our relatives after they hurt our daughter during Christmas 3 years ago. The story I'm sharing with you today happened during Christmas of 2022. Sophia was just 16 years old back then, and I've never forgotten what happened that day. Initially, Olivia and I had planned to host a small, cozy gathering at our home. We were going to invite a few close neighbors over for dinner. That's how we did it every year. Simple, warm, and free from unnecessary drama. But those plans suddenly changed when my dad, Stephen, announced that he'd be hosting Christmas at his place and inviting a few relatives to join. He said it had been a long time since the whole family got together, and he wanted to use the occasion for everyone to reconnect. After getting the invite, Olivia and I sat down to discuss it. My relationship with my parents hadn't been great in recent years. There had been disagreements about life, money, and even how we raised our daughter. But in the end, we decided to go. At the time, I thought it would just be a regular Christmas gathering. We'd eat, make small talk, and go home. I had no idea it would be the last Christmas we'd ever spend together as a family. On the day of the party, we arrived at my parents' house around 5 p.m. 4 cars were parked along the front of their driveway, including a shiny black Mercedes belonging to my cousin Nolan. Just seeing that car already made me feel uneasy. Nolan is the person I despise most in the family. He's always showing off with flashy things and never misses a chance to mock or belittle me at family gatherings. Every time we meet, he has something nasty to say about my job, income, or how I raise my daughter. What's worse is that my entire family, from my parents to the other relatives, treats him like the gold standard of success. They constantly compare me to Nolan, wishing I had a life more like his. But they don't know that behind all that flashy appearance, he's stingy, calculating, and has his house mortgaged to the bank. I know this because his wife once confided in Olivia about the financial struggles they were going through. Still, he keeps putting on a show to make everyone think he's living large. After parking the car neatly, Sophia, Olivia, and I entered the house. The moment we opened the door, loud laughter from the living room echoed out. I knew right away that Nolan was always the center of attention. There were about 10 people in the living room. Uncle Robert, Aunt Donna, people I genuinely liked, were there too. And just as I expected, they were all sitting in a circle, listening to Nolan brag about his latest accomplishments in that overly proud tone of his. When Nolan saw me walk in, his eyes shifted straight toward me. He immediately threw out a jab. "Oh, Damien's here. That outfit's casual, isn't it?" A few people chuckled. I didn't respond. I'd learned to stay silent when it came to his petty provocations. After greeting Uncle Robert, Aunt Donna, and the other relatives, I headed straight to the kitchen to find my mom. She and my dad were busy finishing up the last dishes for the evening. Sweat was dripping from their foreheads. Without waiting to be asked, Olivia, Sophia, and I jumped in to help. We started plating the food and handling little tasks around the kitchen. At least in there, we could avoid Nolan and his snide remarks. Just then, Mia, Nolan's daughter, walked past the kitchen door. 16 years old, with beautifully curled hair and a pricey designer dress. She saw me but didn't say a word. She glanced over with the same smug look her father always had, then strutted away like she was above everything. A strange uneasiness crept in after Mia walked off. I had no idea then, but the family drama that day was going to center around her. Around 6 p.m., all the food was on the dinner table. We quickly blended into the family's shared meal. Throughout the dinner, all eyes were again on Nolan. listening to him brag about his latest accomplishments. He discussed a new business contract, an upcoming trip to Europe, and plans to buy a bigger house. Everyone in the family looked at him with admiration. As for me, I found it laughable. They were all grown adults, yet they believed every word he said without any proof. My family didn't care about what he was saying during the meal. Now and then, Olivia, Sophia, and I passed food to one another and shared warm smiles. While Nolan was showing off about the new Mercedes, I whispered to Olivia, "Do you think he's talking way too much?" Olivia smiled gently and whispered, "Don't let it bother you. Let's eat and head home." Sophia sat beside us, occasionally chiming in on our little family chat. She stayed calm, even after Mia's earlier mocking glare. In that moment, I truly believed everything would be fine. If we stayed quiet and ate, we'd get through the evening. I thought after dinner, we'd say goodbye and head home peacefully. But that was just what I thought. I had no idea back then. The worst part of the evening hadn't even started. After dinner, we all gathered in the living room. My dad, Stephen, stood up and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. As the room quieted, he smiled and roared, "It's time for us to exchange Christmas gifts." Right after his announcement, the mood in the living room instantly turned festive. Everyone looked toward the base of the Christmas tree, where my parents had carefully arranged a pile of neatly wrapped presents. My parents had thoughtfully prepared small gifts to place under the tree. Everyone had something, from the older relatives to us. But that year's Christmas party was different from the others. Before anyone started opening gifts, my dad stood in the center of the living room and roared, "This Christmas is a little more special, because Sophia and Mia will be getting something extra." The room suddenly filled with chatter. I could see Sophia's and Mia's anticipation when they heard there would be special gifts. Mom, Paula, came out of the bedroom carrying 2 identical gift boxes and placed them on the coffee table. Both were wrapped in red paper with elegant gold ribbons. Looking at the matching boxes, I couldn't help but wonder what my parents had put inside. Sophia also glanced at them curiously, while Mia looked noticeably more excited. Then my mom smiled and said to the 2 girls, "You can come up and pick your gift. Each of you gets to choose 1 box." As soon as she finished speaking, I noticed a strange sparkle in Mia's eyes. She seemed genuinely eager to find out what was inside those boxes. On the other hand, Sophia stayed in her seat, waiting politely to see what would happen next. We had always taught her to be respectful and let others go first. The living room was buzzing with excitement and curiosity. Everyone wanted to see what special gifts my parents had prepared for the 2 girls. At that moment, I thought my parents were being thoughtful, that they had put genuine care into preparing something nice. I didn't know that those special gifts were about to spark a family drama I'd never forget for the rest of my life. When the 2 gift boxes were placed on the table, Mia quickly stood up and stepped ahead of Sophia. As she walked, she said firmly, "I'm picking first." Mia had already reached the boxes before any of us or Sophia could react. She picked them up individually, gave them a little shake, then set them back to feel their weight. After nearly a minute of deciding, Mia grabbed one of the boxes and said, "I'll take this one. It's heavier, so it must have something good inside." She took the box and returned to her seat next to Nolan. Sophia hesitated a bit, then stood up and took the remaining box. She smiled politely at my parents before walking back to her seat. With the whole room watching, both girls started opening their gifts. When Mia saw what was inside, she gasped excitedly, "Wow, the newest AirPods Pro." She immediately turned to my parents and said, "I like this gift." I noticed she never actually said thank you to my parents, the ones who had bought the gift for her. I thought they might be annoyed by her lack of manners, but instead, they just smiled and said, "As long as you like it." Then it was Sophia's turn. When she opened her box, inside was a carefully sealed envelope. Mia couldn't help but jab, "Don't tell me your gift is a grocery store discount coupon." Some people chuckled at her comment, and I could already feel my irritation starting to build. Sophia, staying calm, opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded piece of paper. After reading it carefully, she suddenly screamed, "Oh my God, Taylor Swift Eras tour tickets." She immediately ran to my parents, threw her arms around them and said, "Thank you so much for this surprise, Grandpa and Grandma." That's when I remembered just how much she idolized Taylor Swift. She'd always dreamed of attending a concert, but the tickets were too expensive and complicated to find, so that we couldn't get her one. After hugging her grandparents, Sophia asked how they managed to get the ticket. In response, my parents shared the story. A week earlier, they won the ticket during a lucky draw at the bank where they have their savings. At first, they didn't think much of it. They weren't music fans and had no idea who Taylor Swift was. But when the bank staff told them the ticket was worth $300, they decided to hold on and give it to one of the grandkids. They didn't know if either Sophia or Mia liked Taylor Swift. They figured that if the girls weren't interested, they could sell the ticket and keep the money. Watching Sophia's joy and the happy tears in her eyes, I silently thanked my parents for giving my daughter such a meaningful gift. After thanking her grandparents, Sophia returned to her seat beside Olivia. She was still clutching the ticket in her hand, her eyes slightly red from tears of happiness. Just as she sat down, Mia walked over with a determined look in her eyes. With a sharp tone, Mia demanded, "Give me the ticket." Surprised, Sophia looked up at her, then replied politely, "No, you already got your gift." Unwilling to accept that answer, Mia said, "I'll trade you. You take my gift. I should be the one going to the concert." Hearing his daughter, Nolan noticed the tension rising between the two girls. He stood up and tried to calm Mia down with a promise. "Don't worry, sweetie. I'll get you a ticket. There's no need to fight with Sophia." But Mia quickly shook her head and told him, "Dad, the ticket sold out 4 months ago. I already checked. That changed everything." Nolan's face shifted. His eyes grew serious as he turned toward Sophia with a calculating expression. Sensing that the situation between the girls was escalating, my parents began to worry. Not wanting Nolan and Mia to feel upset, my dad stepped in and said to Sophia, "Sophia, could you give the ticket to Mia? You can take Mia's AirPods." My mom agreed, adding, "Yes, sweetie. Be a good girl and let Mia have it." Hearing that blatant favoritism from my parents, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I responded firmly, "Mia made her choice. She has to accept the gift she picked." My dad, clearly annoyed, shot back, "We're all family here. Would it hurt for Sophia to be a little generous?" That pushed me over the edge. Sophia was their granddaughter, yet they weren't standing up for her. Instead, they were siding with Mia to keep Nolan happy. Unable to tolerate the unfairness they were showing my daughter, I turned to Olivia and Sophia and said, "Let's go." With that, the three of us stood up and began to leave the living room. Suddenly, the room went silent and tense. Everyone stared at us in shock. Uncle Robert and Aunt Donna looked confused, unsure of what had happened. Nolan stood there with a sour expression, while Mia clutched her AirPods and stared longingly at the concert ticket still in Sophia's hand. At that moment, I thought we'd leave the house quietly and that this whole story would end there. But I was wrong. As we took a few steps toward the door, Nolan suddenly stood up. When he realized we were leaving, he quickly approached Sophia and blocked her path. With his usual confident tone, he told her, "Sell me the ticket. I'll give you $300 for it." His offer hit me like a punch. Rage instantly flared up inside me. He was trying to use money to negotiate with my daughter, as if Sophia were just some kid who could be bought. That move was like throwing gasoline on the fire already burning inside me. After his offer, Sophia firmly shook her head and replied, "I won't sell the ticket. It's my gift." Before she could finish, Nolan threw out another offer, this time more forcefully. "How about $600? Sophia clutched the ticket tighter and shook her head again, calm and unwavering. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride in her strength. Feeling insulted by being turned down by a 16-year-old, Nolan upped the stakes. He raised his voice. "What about $1,500? Seeing how far he was pushing and his pressure on my daughter, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I roared, "That's enough, Nolan." He immediately turned toward me, eyes filled with hostility, and shouted, "Shut up, Damien. I'm teaching your daughter the value of money." That line sent my anger through the roof. Then, turning back to Sophia threateningly, he said, $3,000, Sophia. What do you say?" The room went eerily silent. Everyone was staring at Sophia, waiting for her response. She now felt deeply disrespected. But instead of fear or hesitation, she locked eyes with Nolan, steady and unwavering. Then she replied in a clear, confident voice, "Even if you offered me $1 million, I still wouldn't sell this ticket." The moment those words left her mouth, a sharp, dry sound snapped through the room. Right after that, Nolan screamed, "Don't you dare talk to me like that." That's when I realized Nolan had slapped Sophia. He hit her, just because she wouldn't sell him the ticket. In that instant, regret flooded over me. Regret for ever agreeing to come to this Christmas party. The moment I saw Nolan slap Sophia, Rage erupted inside me. I charged toward him and kicked him straight to the floor. I didn't stop there. I pinned him down and started punching his face over and over again. The living room exploded into chaos. People screamed in shock, and panic filled the air. Uncle Robert, terrified by the scene, shouted, "Damien, stop it." After that, Aunt Donna cried, "Someone call the police." Just as I was about to land another punch, Olivia and my father rushed over and yanked me off Nolan. Even after they pulled me away, I was still trembling with fury. Then my father, red in the face, yelled at me, "What the hell are you doing, Damien? This is my house. Don't make me lose face." That sentence hit me hard. At that moment, I realized he cared more about saving face than protecting his granddaughter. And it didn't stop there. My mother stormed to Sophia and screamed, "This is all your fault. If you had just given the ticket to Mia, none of this would have happened." When those words came out of her mouth, Olivia rushed over and wrapped her arms around Sophia. I saw my daughter's shoulders trembling, and the tears began falling. Couldn't hold back anymore. With all the fury in my chest, I shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you? Sophia did nothing wrong. The one at fault here is Nolan." Right after that, I turned to Olivia and said, firmly, "Take her to the car. When the police and CPS arrive, come back." Without hesitation, Olivia nodded and quickly led Sophia outside. I didn't wait another second. I pulled out my phone and called 911. In a firm, urgent tone, I reported, "I need to report an assault. A minor was hit. I'm requesting police and CPS at this address immediately." The 911 operator responded, "We have officers patrolling nearby. They'll be there in about 5 minutes." I thanked them and hung up. The moment the call ended, my mother screamed in panic, "You called the police?" While she shouted, Nolan slowly stood up, wiping blood from his mouth. He gave a smug, twisted grin and said, "Let him call. He hit me more. He'll be the one in trouble." Hearing that threat, I locked eyes with him and replied, "Don't forget, you hit a minor. I think you'd better sell your house to pay off the bank and cover damages for my daughter." At the mention of selling his house, a few relatives turned to Nolan, their faces filled with surprise. That's when I decided to expose the truth. Calm but commanding, I told everyone that Nolan was nearly $400,000 in debt to the bank. His wife had already separated from him, and I was the one who lent her $5,000 to start a new life. As soon as I said that, Nolan's face went pale. Sitting quietly in the corner with her usual smug expression, Mia suddenly lost control and shouted, "Everybody shut up!" The room fell into a strange, heavy silence. Everyone looked around at each other, stunned and speechless. Exactly 5 minutes after I made the call, police sirens echoed from the street outside. The tension in the living room instantly tightened. Everyone froze and turned toward the window. When 2 police officers entered the house, I reported everything. I explained from the beginning how Nolan tried to buy the concert ticket from Sophia, how she refused, and how he ended up slapping her right in front of everyone. The first officer, a man in his 40s, carefully took notes as I spoke. After hearing the whole story, he said they needed to talk with the child who had been assaulted to document the injuries. I stepped outside and called Olivia and Sophia back into the living room. When Sophia entered, both officers immediately noticed the unmistakable imprint of a hand across her left cheek and dried blood at the corner of her mouth. The injuries were obvious and undeniable. The second officer, a young woman, quickly pulled out a camera and took detailed photos of Sophia's injuries from multiple angles. She also asked Sophia to open her mouth so she could photograph the inside of the wound. While the officers were collecting evidence, I noticed Nolan sitting silently in a corner of the room. His arrogant expression was gone. The blood on his lip had dried, and the bruises under his eye from my punches were starting to darken. My parents, now realizing how serious the situation had become, started to panic. But instead of acknowledging the truth, they doubled down on defending Nolan. My father approached the officers and started telling a different story. He claimed I had attacked Nolan first for no reason. According to him, Sophia then jumped in to help me, and Nolan only acted in self-defense after being attacked by a child. My mother chimed in, adding that Sophia had been provoking Nolan all night. She said Sophia intentionally hurt Mia's feelings by refusing to share the concert ticket. Listening to their blatant and shameless lies, I felt a wave of rage pulse through me. I couldn't believe my parents were standing there, flat out lying to the police to protect Nolan. The male officer took down their statements, but I could tell from his expression that he didn't buy it. The story didn't add up, especially with the visible injuries on Sophia's face. Thankfully, their lies didn't go unchecked. Uncle Robert, who had remained silent through most of the evening, suddenly stepped forward and spoke up. He told the officers he had a video recording of the entire incident. He explained that when he noticed Nolan negotiating with Sophia in an over-the-top way, he pulled out his phone to record it, thinking it would be just another quirky family moment. He never expected it to escalate into Nolan slapping her. The female officer immediately asked to see the footage. Uncle Robert opened his phone and showed them a 2-minute video. In the clip, Nolan is trying to pressure Sophia with money. Sophia is standing her ground, and then Nolan violently slaps her across the face. The officers carefully watched the entire video and then asked Uncle Robert to send the file to their phones as evidence. This video completely shattered the false story my parents tried to create. After watching the video evidence, the male officer told my parents that their statements did not match the facts. He warned them that providing false information to the police could be considered obstruction of justice. My parents fell utterly silent. There was nothing they could say to deny what had just been shown in the video. Every detail captured clearly, undeniably. In that moment, I looked at my parents and felt something unfamiliar, a hollow kind of sadness. That's when I realized I had lost my father and mother. They had made their choice. They defended the man who slapped my daughter instead of protecting their granddaughter. They were even willing to lie to the police to cover up Nolan's wrongdoing. Aunt Donna and a few other relatives finally spoke up, too. They confirmed that they had witnessed the entire incident and that Sophia had done nothing wrong. They explained that she was trying to protect her grandparents' gift. Nolan, meanwhile, remained seated in silence, clearly realizing the weight of the evidence stacked against him. With the video out, there was no defense left. No way to twist the story. Mia sat next to him, pale and shaken. She had just understood that her father had done something wrong. Tears streamed down her face. Not from sadness, but from fear of what was coming. The entire room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence at that point. Everyone could feel it. Things had gone too far. The damage was done, and serious consequences were now inevitable. A family was torn apart, all over a concert ticket and the unchecked pride of one man. 20 minutes after the police arrived, another car pulled up outside the house while they were still taking witness statements. It was CPS, Child Protective Services, responding to my earlier request. Carol Thompson, a veteran CPS caseworker, walked into the living room with a serious expression. She carried a bag with basic medical tools and a professional-grade camera. After the police briefed her on the situation, Carol walked over to Sophia and thoroughly examined her injuries. She measured the bruising on Sophia's cheek, took photos from multiple angles, and inspected the inside of her mouth for additional trauma. While the CPS worker conducted her assessment, I noticed Olivia sitting close beside Sophia, holding her protectively. Sophia was still trembling slightly, but looked far calmer than earlier. Carol then asked to speak with Sophia privately in another room to ensure she could recount what happened without pressure from the adults. 15 minutes later, Carol and Sophia returned to the living room. The look on Carol's face was noticeably more serious. She came over to me and gave me news that lifted a weight off my shoulders. Mr. Damien, after verifying the injuries and hearing Sophia's statement, we'll submit this case directly to the district attorney's office. You won't need to file charges yourself. Relief washed over me. That meant the legal system would take over from here, and Sophia would be protected without us having to endure a long, stressful court process. Carol went on to explain that the incident was being classified as severe due to the violence against a minor. Nolan's actions weren't just assault. They also involved coercion and intimidation of a child. As the CPS worker did her job, I noticed a shift in the room. My parents sat quietly now, their faces heavy with worry. They were beginning to realize they had sided with the wrong person. Uncle Robert and Aunt Donna kept shaking their heads, clearly disappointed in Nolan's behavior. I overheard them whispering to each other, saying they never imagined someone in the family could hit a child. Nolan, who had primarily stayed silent, looked visibly nervous. Sweat gathered on his forehead, and he kept wiping his hands on his pants. He knew what was coming. Mia, sitting beside her father, no longer looked smug or entitled. She kept glancing towards Sophia, not with jealousy this time, but with something that looked like guilt. Maybe now she understood that no concert ticket was worth all this pain and chaos. The male officer then announced they would take Nolan into custody for formal questioning and processing. He could be released on bail but would have to appear in court within 48 hours. Carol also let us know that CPS will monitor Sophia's well-being moving forward to ensure no long-term emotional effects. She gave us the contact information for a therapist who specializes in trauma cases involving children. Before leaving, Carol turned to my parents and stated that CPS would be officially documenting their attempt to cover up child abuse. This could impact their ability to interact with other grandchildren in the future. My mother began to cry. It was only after hearing that she seemed to grasp the real consequence of defending Nolan, that she might lose the trust of the system meant to protect children. The police then asked Nolan to stand and put out his hands. When they cuffed him, the air in the room turned ice cold. As they began to lead him out, Mia suddenly jumped up and ran after him, crying uncontrollably. "Dad, I'm sorry. I don't want you to get arrested," she screamed. Watching the scene unfold, Sophia turned to me and said softly, "Dad, I feel bad for Mia." I hugged her tightly and said, "This isn't your fault, sweetheart. These are the consequences of the choices adults made." After the police and CPS left, the living room fell into a dead silence. No one knew what to say. A Christmas party had turned into a family tragedy. After the police and CPS left, the living room fell into complete silence. No one knew what to say after everything that had just happened. A Christmas party had turned into a full-blown family tragedy. Olivia, Sophia, and I stood near the front door, ready to leave this house behind. We had gathered our bags and were prepared to go home after a night's nightmare. Just then, Sophia stopped. She looked around the living room, her eyes passing over every person in the room. Then, slowly, she stepped into the center of it all. Everyone turned their gaze toward her, unsure of what she was about to do. Sophia stood tall, her expression calm and determined. Not like a 16-year-old girl, but like someone far beyond her years. She held the Taylor Swift concert ticket in her hand, the very thing that had sparked everything that went wrong tonight. With a clear and steady voice, she began to speak. "This ticket isn't just for a concert. It was my dream, a gift from my grandparents that meant a lot to me. But now," she paused for a moment, locking eyes with the people around her. Then she continued, "I've realized that some things are more important than dreams, like dignity and respect. No one has the right to use money to bribe or threaten someone else." After those words, she raised the ticket so everyone could see it. And then, to everyone's shock, Sophia began tearing it into pieces. The sound of paper ripping echoed through the silent room. Everyone reacted differently to what they saw. Mia's jaw dropped in disbelief. She had wanted that ticket so severely she was willing to do anything for it. And now Sophia was destroying it right in front of her. My parents looked at Sophia with stunned expressions. A shift came over them as they realized they had made a terrible mistake, that they had failed to protect their granddaughter. Uncle Robert and Aunt Donna nodded in silent admiration. They looked proud of Sophia's strength and maturity. As for me, I was overwhelmed with pride. At that moment, I saw my daughter not just as a child anymore, but as a young woman with courage and character. Someone who knew how to stand up for what was right. After tearing up the ticket, Sophia let the pieces fall gently to the floor. She looked around the room one last time and said, "I hope everyone here learned something from today. Nothing is more valuable than dignity and respect." At that moment, Olivia stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Sophia, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "I'm so proud of you." I joined them and pulled both of them into an embrace. In that moment, our little family felt stronger and more united than ever. Sophia's actions had stirred something in everyone in the room. They began to understand that material things mean nothing compared to values like self-respect, mutual respect, and family love. After that defining moment, we left the house in silence. No one said a word, but everyone knew their lives had changed forever after that Christmas night. 2 weeks after the incident at my parents' house, the criminal trial took place at the county courthouse. The case was considered severe enough to be fast-tracked. A message to the community about the importance of addressing family violence and protecting children. That morning, Olivia, Sophia, and I arrived at the courthouse early. Despite her young age, Sophia was calm and composed. She understood that testifying was necessary to make sure justice was served. Our attorney, Mr. Michael Torres, had thoroughly prepared for the trial. Judge Patricia Henderson, a stern yet fair woman in her early 50s, presided over the case, running the courtroom professionally and clearly. The prosecutor presented the evidence systematically. First was the video Uncle Robert had recorded, which clearly showed Nolan threatening Sophia with money and then slapping her. The clip was played in the courtroom, and many in attendance shook their heads in disbelief. Next were the injury photos taken by the police at the scene, the unmistakable imprint of a hand on Sophia's cheek and the wound inside her mouth. These visuals were undeniable. Witness testimonies followed. Uncle Robert gave an honest account of what he had seen. Aunt Donna and other relatives confirmed that Sophia had done nothing wrong, that Nolan had acted unjustifiably. However, the report from CPS officer Carol Thompson added serious weight to the case. She highlighted how Nolan's actions had not only caused physical harm but also posed a long-term psychological risk to Sophia. Nolan's attorney tried to argue that he had been provoked and reacted out of a temporary loss of control, but he was unable to present any convincing evidence to support this defense. Then Sophia was called to the stand. She answered every question calmly and truthfully. When asked how she felt, she said, "I just wanted to keep the gift my grandparents gave me. I don't understand why Uncle Nolan got so angry that he hit me." Her honest words moved many in the courtroom, even the judge. Nolan also took the stand. He tried to claim that he only wanted to buy the ticket and never meant to hurt Sophia. But when pressed about why he slapped a 16-year-old girl, he couldn't offer any meaningful justification. Judge Henderson reviewed all the evidence and testimonies with great care, especially the video, which made it impossible to deny the violent nature of Nolan's actions. After a brief deliberation, she delivered her verdict. Nolan was sentenced to 2 years in prison for child assault and intimidation. In addition, he was ordered to pay Sophia $10,000 in damages, including emotional distress compensation. Nolan's face went pale when he heard the verdict and slumped into his chair. His attorney leaned in to whisper something, but it was clear there was little hope for an appeal. Judge Henderson added, "This case is a reminder that children must be protected from all forms of violence. There is no excuse, ever, for an adult to strike a child, under any circumstance." She also addressed my actions, specifically, my physical retaliation against Nolan. After reviewing the evidence and considering the context, she showed leniency. The court acknowledged that I had acted out of instinct to protect my daughter from violence. While the law does not condone vigilante justice, the emotional response of a father in such a situation was understandable. In the end, I received a formal warning for the assault. Judge Henderson stressed that I should rely on legal channels rather than violence to resolve conflicts. She also expressed hope that I would learn from this event. Though my intentions were clear, she emphasized the need to trust in the justice system. I accepted the warning with sincerity and thanked the court for its fairness. Deep down, I knew I had done the right thing to protect Sophia, even if there were consequences. What mattered most was that justice had been served and my daughter was safe. After the trial, the video of Nolan slapping Sophia, along with the verdict, was covered by news outlets and quickly went viral across social media. The story became a powerful reminder of the importance of protecting children and refusing to tolerate domestic violence. Thousands of people commented, praising Sophia for her bravery and emotional maturity. Many also supported me as a father who defended his daughter fiercely. For our family, the trial brought not only justice but closure. It marked the end of a painful chapter in our lives. Now, we could move forward, knowing that the system had stood up for those who needed protection most. After the trial, I decided to do something special for Sophia. Even though she had torn up her Taylor Swift concert ticket with incredible bravery, I knew deep down that she still dreamed of attending the show. Getting a ticket to the Eras tour at that point felt almost impossible. They had sold out months ago, and on resale markets, the prices had skyrocketed to $2,000, $3,000 for a decent seat. But I didn't give up. I started asking everyone, friends, coworkers, strangers in online groups. I posted on Facebook, LinkedIn, and even Twitter, hoping to find someone with a spare ticket. Finding a ticket became my obsession. Every day after work, I spent hours scouring ticket sites, forums, and messaging anyone with a lead. Olivia would gently remind me occasionally that Sophia had come to terms with not attending the concert, that she didn't want me exhausting myself. But I couldn't let it go. This wasn't just about a concert anymore. It was about showing my daughter that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, doesn't go unrewarded. After 2 relentless weeks of searching, luck finally came to us. Jake Morrison, a younger colleague at my company, had heard about our situation through the news coverage of the trial. Jake told me he had bought tickets to the show months ago to attend with his girlfriend, but they had recently broken up, and something came up on the concert day. Instead of flipping the ticket for a profit, Jake offered to sell it to me at face value, $500. When he said that, I couldn't believe my ears. In a world where everyone was trying to make a buck off scarcity, Someone offering a ticket at the original price felt like a miracle. I immediately transferred the money and thanked Jake with everything I had. He just smiled and said he admired how Sophia handled herself during everything that happened. While Sophia was doing her homework in her room that evening, I called her to the living room. She looked curious, unsure of what was coming. I handed her the ticket and told her this was a reward, not for being a victim, but for being strong, brave, and true to herself. I also told her I was sorry that she had to endure what happened that Christmas night. When she saw the ticket, she threw her arms around me and said she already knew I had done everything possible to protect her. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy this time. Olivia was right there with us and joined in our warm family hug. She said she was proud of both of us, of Sophia for her courage, and of me for never giving up. The night of the concert became one of the most beautiful memories our family has ever shared. I took Sophia myself, and when Taylor Swift performed the songs she loved most, I watched my daughter shine with the brightest smile I had ever seen. In that moment, I realized something. Sometimes, our most complex trials give us our most treasured moments. That concert wasn't just the fulfillment of Sophia's dream. It was a symbol that justice matters, that love wins, and no matter how dark things get, light always waits on the other side. 3 years have passed since that fateful Christmas night, and our family's life has changed in ways I never imagined. Cutting ties completely with my parents after the trial wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. We haven't been in contact since the judge delivered her final verdict. Over the past 3 years, my parents have visited our house a few times, hoping to apologize and make amends. They especially wanted to see Sophia, maybe to offer her a direct apology for what happened. But Sophia has firmly declined every attempt. She told me she doesn't want to see the people who failed to protect her when she needed it most. Her maturity and resolve in standing her ground have made me even more proud of the young woman she's become. I've held the same position. Every time my parents came to our door, I didn't answer. I've learned that sometimes, love means knowing when to say no and setting clear boundaries. As for Nolan, his life completely unraveled after the trial. He was released after serving 18 months of his sentence for good behavior, but the consequences of his actions have followed him ever since. To cover the court-ordered damages and legal fees, Nolan had to sell his mortgaged home to pay off his debts. He now lives in a small apartment and works low-wage jobs. His reputation in the business world has been destroyed. Nolan's daughter, Mia, lives with her mother in another state. After watching her father get arrested and sent to prison, she cut off all contact with him. And honestly, I think that was the healthiest choice she could have made. She deserves a positive, supportive environment to grow up in. Today, Sophia is 19, a freshman at Northwestern University on a full scholarship. She's majoring in psychology, with hopes of becoming a therapist for children who've experienced trauma. Her own experience inspired her to help others in the way she once needed help herself. What happened 3 years ago forced Sophia to grow up faster than most. But it also taught her to set boundaries, to protect herself, and never to let anyone use power or money to control her. Those lessons have given her quiet confidence that's already incredibly shaped her college life. Sophia still loves Taylor Swift, but now she understands there are things more important than personal dreams. She's told me more than once that tearing up that ticket was her best decision ever. As a family, we're closer than we've ever been. We've learned to cherish the quiet moments together and never take the importance of protecting each other for granted. Still, sometimes I ask myself whether I should give my parents a second chance. It's a question I haven't found the answer to yet. And now, I want to ask you the same question before ending this story. What would you do in my shoes? Would you give them another chance? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories like this one. That's the end of my story. Thank you for spending time with me, and I'll see you again at the next one.